And on the global scene, Russia's defense ministry said more than 1,700 Ukrainian soldiers have surrendered at the Azov-style steel plant in Mariupol since May 16. Several hundred are more reportedly still inside. Also on the Russian scene, a Russian soldier accused of killing an unarmed man in Ukraine war pleaded guilty to war crime at a trial in Kiev, the first such trial since the invasion began, and told the man's widow he was sorry for killing his husband. Top Taliban leader makes more promises on women's rights, but equipped naughty women should stay home. But the Taliban have repeatedly made assurance to the international community that it will protect the rights of women and girls since seizing Afghanistan last August, while simultaneously stripping away many of their freedoms and protections. Russia's invasion of Ukraine could soon cause a global food crisis that may last for years, the United Nations has warned. Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the war has worsened food insecurity in poorer nations due to rise in prices. He also warned that the only effective solution to this crisis was reintegrating Ukraine's food production as well as fertilizer produced by both Russia and Belarus back into the global market. To analyze this, I am joined live via a phone call with Public Intel Global Affairs analyst Captain Akghigbe. Captain, thank you for joining. If you can hear me, what do you have for us this week?
Correct. Yeah, it's kind of been an interesting week on the global scene. Today, I have two areas I would love us to discuss. The first being, as you'd expect, the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, which kind of seems to be at an impasse of sorts. Now, we have had skirmishes around Mariupol. We saw soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers, a lot of them surrendering to the Russian armed forces. But it's still rather unclear whether Vladimir Putin will have achieved his objectives in this limited war. And this is a conflict that has every potential to escalate into one of the many World War III scenarios that has been contemplated by analysts over the years. I mean, it does sound scary sometimes, when you say this, but it is what it is with all of the players and with the antecedents that led us into the First World War and the Second World War. Now, one of the interesting developments from this conflict is the Russian soldier, 21-year-old soldier, Vadim Shishimarin, who confessed to killing a 61-year-old unarmed Ukrainian. And this kind of adds credence to, the accusations by the Ukrainian authorities again and again that the Russian armed forces have been involved in perpetuating war crimes. Truth be told, this will happen in conflict, in war situations on either side because it's an extreme. But this development, as we see it, with this soldier confessing to the crimes, even though we're waiting for the final outcome of this trial, but it only serves to lose Vladimir valuable points in the PR battle that's going on in the media. Now, on the other side of it, we have NATO and its allies, and this is going to give them an opportunity to push further for sanctions in the international community. Now, still on this crisis, we see that this week the United Nations issued a warning that this conflict is going to have very dire consequences on food security. Now, I see this as a kind of call to arms for nations around the world to prepare to bridge that gap of roughly about 20 million tons of grains that are currently locked up in Ukraine. There's might be some opportunity here for African nations, and it would consist of being able to draw that foreign investment into what I would call credible agricultural projects. Nigeria, as an example, for instance, has over 34 million hectares of arable land, which makes it about the 9th largest in the world. Now, if we move to Afghanistan, there was a very interesting interview during the week with the interior minister, who kind of doubles as the Taliban's co-leader. And he gave what would be considered as the first on-camera interview where he talked about women and the question of them being able to attend secondary school. He reiterated that Afghani women will always be subject to the Taliban interpretation of Islamic law and national, cultural, and traditional principles. Well, truth be told, again, and from the way I see it, the current situation in Afghanistan is a reminder to us that the rights of women still has a long journey to go. Every nation has its own journey, some longer than others. And we see even some of the developed economies have gone down this road, and it's taken them quite a while to get to where they are today. And a very good example of this, which may be surprising to some of our viewers, is coming out of the United States, where we find that women were not allowed to vote. Women were not allowed to vote in the United States for quite a long time. And this led to a movement known as the women's suffrage movement. And it started around 1840s. And we saw that state by state, women were given the right to vote, but it was only in 1920 that a federal law was passed that allowed all women across the United States to vote. So we see an 80-year struggle just for women to have the right to vote. Just before I round up, I'll just go through an interesting point here that shows that if you have 1%, for every 1% of women that are educated, there's an associated 0.3% rise in GDP, which is so essential to the national economy. So this is what I have for us this week, and I look forward to all the developments and what we can share next week. Have a lovely day.
All right, that's it on Public Intel Global Affairs. And that was with Captain Akghigbe. Coming up next on Public Intel is Public Intel Go There. Do stay tuned. We'll be right back.